Top 20 Biggest U.S. Retail Chains Near Collapse. Once, these stores were part of everyday American life. Busy aisles, familiar faces, and shelves stacked with possibility. But now, many are vanishing fast. In this video, we're uncovering 20 U.S. retail giants that are dangerously close to collapse. McDonald's. McDonald's brought families together under golden arches that promised a hot meal for only a few spare dollars and a break from the day's grind. For generations, it stood at the crossroads of affordability and routine. Familiar counters, smiling crews, and the smell of fries spilling from paper bags. But that chapter seems to be fading. In neighborhood after neighborhood, especially in working-class districts, those storefronts are darkening. The numbers speak plainly. A Big Mac meal now averages $13, turning a fast food visit for a family of 4 into a financial strain. Households who counted McDonald's as a weekly comfort are now making the hard decision to cook at home, not by choice, but by necessity. Beneath the surface, the challenges run deeper. Locations in major cities like Chicago and Los Angeles are shuttering not only from declining foot traffic, but due to rising crime and shrinking staff pools. Jobs that served as a stepping stone for teens and part-time workers now go unfilled. Self-order kiosks have replaced human interaction, leaving behind a sterile transactional experience that many, especially the elderly and children, struggle to connect with. And yet, competitors are waiting in the wings. Chick-fil-A, Wendy's, and even gas station chains are stepping in, reshaping the quick-serve landscape. As the pillars that built McDonald's begin to fracture, it becomes harder to ignore what's at stake. Not only the decline of a fast food empire, but perhaps a deeper unraveling of an American institution. Macy's. How does a name that stood so tall begin to slip beneath the surface without anyone stopping it? Macy's, stitched into parades, holiday windows, and the rhythm of American shopping seasons, is now struggling to hold its ground. There was a time when stepping into one of its flagship stores felt like entering a grand hall of tradition, with escalators humming and perfume counters glowing under soft light. But lately, those same escalators are more likely to be silent than spinning. Across the country, doors are closing and foot traffic is vanishing. Shoppers who filled Macy's floors now scroll past it entirely. The shift didn't happen overnight, but as larger competitors expanded aggressively and shoppers prioritized efficiency and instant access, Macy's struggled to keep pace. Year after year, profits narrowed. In 2024, revenue slipped again, this time more than 5%, and with it, confidence in the brand. What's harder to measure is the loss of presence. For generations, Macy's wasn't just a store, it was a destination at the heart of every city mall. Now, as costs rise and expectations shift, that identity is fading. Whether Macy's finds a path forward or joins the long list of retail titans lost to time depends on what it's willing to become next. Walgreens. Bright pharmacy signs bathed corners of busy neighborhoods in light, marking a place where families picked up prescriptions, bought cough drops in winter, and caught up with neighbors by the register. But across the country, those familiar stores are locking their doors for good. In 2024 alone, Walgreens closed over 700 locations, with the hardest-hit states bearing the weight of rising theft, shrinking staff, and neighborhoods left without basic care. Inside the company, the picture looks no better. Billions in losses have forced painful decisions, cutting jobs, selling assets, and reducing hours in stores already short on help. At the pharmacy counter, staff are leaving their posts, speaking out against hazardous working conditions and pre-programmed procedures that override professional discretion. What used to be a 5-minute stop for medicine can now mean waiting in long lines or leaving empty-handed. And there's more at stake than revenue charts. In small towns and working-class districts, Walgreens isn't just a store. It's often the last link to vaccines, blood pressure checks, and children's antibiotics. As the chain retreats, entire communities lose more than convenience. They lose care. What happens next will test more than one brand's future. It may redefine what it means to have access to everyday health in America. CVS. Pharmacy counters used to be part of the neighborhood rhythm, lined with cough syrup, cotton swabs, and the quiet comfort of knowing help was nearby. For decades, CVS stood among the most recognizable names in that world, woven into suburban strip malls and city corners across America. But the ground beneath it is shifting faster than anyone expected. As prescription refills shift to app-based services, virtual consultations gain traction, and next-day shipments become the norm, CVS finds itself confronting pressures that extend well beyond financial decline. The chain, defined by accessibility, is now burdened by rising labor costs and the heavy upkeep of thousands of locations. Amazon and other digital-first platforms have swept in with faster, cheaper alternatives, reshaping expectations and dismantling what used to be the norm. Although CVS holds the top spot among pharmacy networks nationwide, that distinction carries diminishing weight in a market shaped by instant access and changing expectations. Reports show a growing number of customers have already made the switch. Each change begins with a personal choice: a parent choosing home delivery for allergy medicine, an older adult deciding to stay home instead of making the trip to the pharmacy. It adds up. And now, CVS is standing at a crossroads. As the marketplace continues to prioritize faster access, seamless service, and constant evolution, the question grows louder. How long can brick-and-mortar locations hold their ground? Best Buy. What draws people into a store when screens already bring the world to their fingertips? For years, Best Buy offered something more than a purchase. It gave customers the space to wander through glowing aisles, test a new laptop, or compare televisions side by side. Families visited on weekends, teens browsed headphones with birthday cash, and sales associates explained new gadgets with patience and pride. But those scenes are growing rare. In 2023, Best Buy reported a sharp decline in both revenue and profit. Not because people stopped buying tech, but because the way they buy has changed. Consumers have shifted toward tech-driven channels that offer faster service, broader selection, and easier comparisons. Amazon, with its massive inventory and fast delivery, has outpaced what traditional retail can offer. Meanwhile, rising rent, labor costs, and a cooling tech market have placed added pressure on Best Buy's in-store model. As devices last longer and consumers hesitate to upgrade, the company has begun shrinking its footprint, closing stores in once busy retail corridors. What remains is a question of relevance. Without a physical presence, the experience of discovery grows thinner. Best Buy's retreat marks more than a business decision. It signals another thread coming loose in the fabric of American retail life. Which retail chain do you think is next to go under? Costco. Rows of bulk goods, the rattle of oversized carts, and the scent of rotisserie chicken near checkout. These were familiar parts of an American weekend. Costco stood as a symbol of practicality, where families stocked up and stretched paychecks a little further. Yet beyond the concrete exterior and rows of overhead lamps, deeper shifts are taking shape, signs that point to more than fluctuations tied to holidays or weather. Although the company reported over $240 billion in revenue in 2024, cracks are surfacing beneath the surface. Membership fees considered a bargain now seem like a hurdle for younger consumers with tighter budgets. A growing number of Gen Z and millennials are leaning toward platforms that don't require annual dues, bulk purchases, or a trunk full of space. For urban dwellers without large freezers or cars, the appeal of a warehouse club fades fast. Inflation hasn't helped. Costs tied to labor, logistics, and imported goods continue to rise. Meanwhile, the company's hesitation in evolving its retail strategy has stretched the distance between what shoppers expect and what they encounter. While competitors accelerate with rapid delivery services and app-based convenience, Costco holds to a format shaped in a slower era. Unless something shifts, what felt essential may slowly become irrelevant in a faster, leaner world. Dollar General. Could a single storefront really carry the weight of an entire town? For years, Dollar General played that role across rural America, stocking the essentials in places overlooked by big chains. It wasn't built for flair, it was built for function. Bread, batteries, cough syrup, crayons, all within reach and within budget. Families relied on it not because they wanted to, but because they had to. Now, that fragile support is starting to collapse. Despite operating more than 19,000 stores, more than Walmart, McDonald's, or Starbucks, the company is stumbling. In 2023, its stock nosedived over 50%, triggering a leadership shakeup and public concern. Violence has surged inside its locations, especially in southern states, where understaffed stores operate without basic security or working safety equipment. The Occupational Safety and Health Administration hit the company with record-setting fines after uncovering blocked exits, untrained workers, and fire hazards. Meanwhile, rapid expansion has outpaced the company's ability to maintain its stores. Products are scattered without order, dates on packaging often pass unnoticed, and staff levels have fallen to critical lows. As conditions decline, trust among loyal shoppers is beginning to unravel. And for towns with no other retail options, this slow decay signals more than corporate failure. It's a growing fracture in the backbone of America's rural economy. Nordstrom. Shoppers used to dress up for a visit to Nordstrom. Polished floors, live pianists, attentive staff who knew your name. It was a place where buying shoes felt like an occasion. That kind of experience set the chain apart, defining luxury retail for generations who valued care as much as clothing. But the rhythm of shopping has changed, and Nordstrom is struggling to keep pace. In its fourth quarter of 2024, revenue dropped by over 4%, and profits thinned to their lowest margin in more than 10 years. While Nordstrom Rack was meant to draw in value-conscious buyers, its inconsistent performance has left the brand caught between two identities, one foot in high-end tradition, the other chasing discount volume. Customers today prefer tapping a screen over browsing aisles. They return clothes with free labels, check reviews on the spot, and expect next-day delivery. Nordstrom's late push into e-commerce hasn't been enough to match faster, cheaper competitors. Store closures have followed. In major cities central to the company's image, doors are closing and lease signs are going up. What's unfolding isn't abrupt, but it's impossible to ignore. A brand built on elegance is now trying to stay relevant in a retail landscape that no longer waits. Save Mart. Saturday mornings used to begin with a short drive to Save Mart. Cracked sidewalks, hand-lettered sale signs in the window, carts clattering across uneven pavement. This was the heartbeat of everyday shopping for thousands of working families across California's small towns and older suburbs. For decades, this grocery chain held its ground where others refused to build, offering a lifeline to communities overlooked by national giants. But in late 2023, that story began to unravel. After its acquisition by a private equity firm, the chain entered a period of rapid restructuring. Stores closed, staff were cut, price strategies shifted, and in the process, trust began to erode. Shoppers facing tighter budgets began turning to discount chains and grocery services that offered deliveries without the same compromises. Save Mart's challenge runs deeper than profit margins. Its reach falls short of competing with Walmart's vast footprint, and its technology strategy trails the advancements shaping modern grocery retail. In rural pockets of the Central Valley, it may be the only store for miles. When one of those closes, it's not an inconvenience. It's a setback that reshapes daily life. So as shelves empty out across rural markets and lights fade in once reliable shops, are we witnessing a slow erosion of food availability in communities left out of the modern economy? Rite Aid. Corner drugstores held more than medicine. They brought human connection to the checkout line, shared guidance without formalities, and created spaces where everyday errands turned into neighborhood encounters. For many towns, Rite Aid filled that role. At its height, the chain spanned over 4,600 locations and served as a dependable stop for everything from prescriptions to toothpaste. Today, that chain has contracted sharply, stripping vast areas of any physical access to its services. The company's unraveling accelerated after legal action tied to the opioid crisis revealed deep cracks beneath the surface. Accusations from the Department of Justice pointed to a failure to act, and the consequences have been steep: billions in debt, asset liquidation, and mass layoffs. But financial penalties only tell part of the story. As healthcare shifted toward app-based systems and larger pharmacy networks expanded into full-service wellness centers, Rite Aid held fast to an outdated format. The company lacked modern tech integration and failed to establish a new direction. Customers who waited at counters are now tapping apps for same-day delivery. In outlying towns and edge-of-city neighborhoods, each shutdown strips away access to care, cutting off residents who depend on proximity for essential prescriptions. For elderly residents or those managing chronic illness without transportation, access to basic medication has quietly vanished. What began as a corporate misstep now echoes through America's fragile community healthcare network. If this video brought back memories or made you think twice about where you shop, give it a thumbs up, and don't forget to click the bell so you never miss what's next. GameStop. When did picking up a GameStop being part of the fun? GameStop used to be more than a store. It was a destination. Kids saved lunch money for trade-ins, crowds gathered for midnight launches, and plastic bags full of promise walked out the door. But in 2024, that world is nearly gone. Over 500 locations have shut down this year alone, leaving malls and main streets without the familiar red logo. The company's late attempt to build an e-commerce presence failed to close the widening divide between customer expectations and actual service. Glitches, sluggish shipping, and outdated site design have driven players elsewhere. With most customers now downloading directly through digital platforms, the days of browsing shelves for discs are fading fast. Desperate to stay relevant, GameStop jumped into the NFT boom. That strategy backfired, resulting in a surplus of unused virtual products and deeper financial strain. Accessory and collectible sales, a small win, now fall short of covering shrinking hardware and software revenues. Inside the shops that have yet to close, the atmosphere has thinned. Job cuts, poor leadership, and shrinking crowds have chipped away at stability. As the industry pivots toward downloads and disk drives disappear from new systems, the model that once fueled GameStop's rise no longer supports its survival. And as each shuttered location disappears, so too does another piece of gaming's retail past. Pier 1 imports. Fragrance and fabric used to lead the way through Pier 1. You'd step across the threshold and into a world lined with carved wood, textured pillows, and glassware with imperfect edges, the kind that felt crafted by hand, not stamped by machines. Every shelf held something unexpected. That surprise helped Pier 1 stand apart, drawing in shoppers with a taste for pieces that told a story. Now, that rhythm has vanished. Its attempt at revival through e-commerce has stumbled, generating delays, dissatisfaction, and growing disconnection from its original appeal. Orders arrive late, quality slips through the cracks, and prices no longer make sense in a world shaped by free shipping and 5-star reviews. Its core audience has pulled back. Rising rates and tighter wallets have driven middle-income buyers toward big-box stores with faster service and fewer risks. Meanwhile, Pier 1's attempt to cut overhead by trimming staff and thinning inventory has only magnified its problems. Warehouses can't keep pace, and the curated charm has dissolved into repetition. The brand's name continues to float across websites, yet the experience now offered lacks the craftsmanship and intimacy that once set it apart. Products may still appear in listings, but the atmosphere that once defined the company has faded amid the churn of modern retail transitions. Barnes & Noble. Does a bookstore still have a place in a world of endless scrolling? Barnes & Noble stood as a haven, walls lined with stories, weekend readers browsing for hours, parents introducing their kids to beloved paperbacks. The experience felt intentional, slow in the best way, and anchored in discovery. But in today's market, that pace no longer keeps the lights on. By 2024, over 180 locations have closed. Many of those left are bleeding revenue. Attempts to branch into lifestyle retail, puzzles, mugs, curated gifts, haven't bridged the growing financial gap. Rent is up, margins are down, and more readers are turning elsewhere, bypassing aisles entirely in favor of faster, more convenient ways to access books. Across the web, the brand has struggled to keep pace. Its ordering system lags, falling short of the speed and reliability customers have come to expect from larger competitors. While Amazon fulfills deliveries within hours, Barnes & Noble's platform continues to frustrate with delays and outdated functionality. Customer loyalty is fading, and even publishers are voicing concern over late payments and shrinking orders. The brand now reflects a pace of reading shaped by reflection and solitude, an approach increasingly at odds with today's fast-scrolling habits and the constant churn of digital content. The company hasn't vanished, but its footing grows weaker with every quarter. For those who found refuge among its stacks, the loss cuts deeper than retail. It marks the fading of a cultural anchor. Kmart. The red K once stood tall across American suburbs, a beacon for weekend errands and childhood toy runs. Kmart wasn't just a store, it was where working-class families stretched paychecks and kids circled wish list items in the Sunday flyer. But that chapter is closing fast. By 2024, the chain has dwindled to a sparse footprint, its presence overshadowed by towering competitors that now dominate the retail landscape. The numbers tell a grim story. Annual revenue has collapsed below $200 million. Stores sit in decay, stocked with outdated goods, flickering fluorescents, and aisles that echo more than they invite. Attempts to pivot into smaller formats have stumbled. The website is nearly irrelevant, and brand loyalty has eroded into internet mockery. Shoppers have moved on, drawn to cleaner aisles, lower prices, and faster shipping. Meanwhile, workers face inconsistent schedules, stagnant wages, and little optimism. For vendors and creditors, faith in the company's future has worn thin. Kmart now drifts through retail history as a hollowed shell, burdened by debt that grows heavier with every passing quarter. The blue light specials have dimmed, and the culture it helped shape is folding in on itself. This isn't the closure of a chain. It's the burial of an era built on affordability, accessibility, and American retail dreams. Bed Bath & Beyond. For decades, Bed Bath & Beyond anchored suburban shopping with its sprawling aisles of cookware, stacked linens, and those oversized blue coupons that filled drawers in homes across America. It carved out a place in suburban life, offering everything from coffee makers to college dorm linens. But that familiar presence is vanishing, store by store. More than 200 locations have closed in the past year alone, part of a rapid unraveling fueled by overextended supply chains, bloated inventories, and outdated pricing tactics. Losses have soared beyond $5 billion, while internal leadership turnover has only deepened the instability. Shoppers walk into half-stocked stores with vacant shelves and shrinking staff. Employees are let go, payouts are slashed, leases are canceled. Attempts to challenge dominant tech-driven retailers fell flat, and rebranding came well after consumer habits had shifted elsewhere. Amazon and Walmart now dominate the space comfortably held by Bed Bath & Beyond. The company has become a cautionary case, one where hesitation outpaced innovation. Activity across its aisles has dwindled. In place of that familiar hum, a gradual decline moves through each site, signaling the unraveling of a brand once considered integral to daily domestic life in the U.S. The shelves haven't all been cleared yet, but the dust is beginning to settle. Do you miss any of these stores, or have you already moved on to other options? Office Depot. Folders stretched across display panels, printers buzzed within display cases, and cartons of paper waited neatly at aisle ends, ready to be carted off to desks and supply rooms. Office Depot didn't need to impress. It functioned. It delivered what people needed to keep work moving. But that rhythm has broken. As 2024 unfolds, the company drifts further into crisis. More than 200 stores have closed, and losses continue to mount quarter after quarter. With liabilities exceeding $2 billion and sales on a steady decline, Office Depot is fighting to stay viable in a marketplace that has shifted toward faster models and left traditional operations struggling to catch up. Attempts to reinvent itself through tech services and shared workspaces have fallen flat, draining resources without reviving foot traffic. Remote work, seen as a possible savior, has only chipped away at demand for office staples. Across much of the country, former customers now click instead of commute. Store shelves grow sparse, employees are stretched thin, and brand identity has all but evaporated. The future appears unsettled, an operation caught mid-shift, searching for relevance in a marketplace that prizes immediacy over paper trays and ink refills. Victoria's Secret. Isn't it strange to see a brand that dominated billboards and runways now struggle to find its place on a crowded digital shelf? Victoria's Secret, the crown jewel of American lingerie retail, is faltering under the weight of its own legacy. As of 2024, more than 300 store closures have been reported. Empty aisles and clearance bins have become more familiar than fashion shows and photo ops. For years, the brand anchored itself to narrow standards that no longer resonate with today's consumers. Meanwhile, rivals such as Aerie and Savage X Fenty have leaned into diversity, connection, and modernity. The shift has been stark. What drew admiration now draws critique, and attempts to adapt have felt late and fragmented. On top of internal hurdles, soaring input prices and inconsistent distribution have only deepened the strain. During peak shopping periods, shelves often lack core items, and the company falls short of matching the pace and precision set by sharper rivals. Victoria's Secret isn't merely adjusting to change, it's chasing it. And unless it can rebuild trust, modernize its identity, and reestablish relevance, the brand risks fading into a catalog of retail giants that didn't evolve fast enough. Big Lots. The bargain aisle used to be a place where working families stretched every dollar, hunting for deals beneath flickering fluorescents and towering stacks of clearance goods. Big Lots became a fixture in that world, its shelves packed with off-brand surprises, its seasonal displays always promising more for less. But that chapter is rapidly drawing to a close. In 2024, over 150 stores have been shut down, and those remaining often resemble a warehouse in disarray. Walk into one now, and you're more likely to encounter half-stocked shelves, dim corners, and a staff pushed beyond their limits. The company's formula, low prices on bulk closeouts, has buckled under rising shipping fees, labor shortages, and inflation that shows no mercy. While giants such as Walmart and Dollar Tree sharpen logistics and grow through modern channels, Big Lots struggles to keep pace. The website functions poorly, upgrades show little traction, and internal stability continues to erode. Staffing disruptions have reached critical levels. Pay stagnates, spirits drop, and dissatisfaction among shoppers grows louder by the day. Analysts warn that Big Lots is edging toward collapse, not with a bang, but a steady erosion. A brand built on helping struggling Americans afford life's basics may soon disappear, another casualty of an economy that's outpacing its oldest survivors. Party City. Who knew a store built around celebration could end in such a heavy silence? Party City, the go-to for streamers, balloons, and last-minute costumes, now looks more like a closing act than a grand opening. The shelves that used to overflow with glitter and color are thinning out as the company struggles under nearly $2 billion in debt. The trouble runs deeper than dollars. Helium prices have soared, and party habits have changed. Many households now rely on video guides and wholesale delivery services, opting out of in-person shopping altogether. In an era shaped by speed and simplicity, Party City's approach, spacious layouts, specialized products, and calendar-driven sales cycles, feels out of sync with how people shop today. By 2024, over 300 stores had shut their doors, marking the company's second bankruptcy in 5 years. Thousands lost jobs. Rebranding efforts fell flat. The attempted tech transition, meant to revive the brand, collapsed under system failures and growing customer complaints. At the same time, rivals offering quicker fulfillment and more intuitive technology pulled ahead, leaving Party City struggling to catch up. Analysts now point to missteps that began years earlier: poor leadership, delayed innovation, and a refusal to adjust to shifting demand. What promised joy at every turn has instead become a lesson in what happens when a business can't evolve fast enough. Venture stores. How many families walked through sliding doors at venture stores with grocery lists in hand and hopes of finding more for less? That was the promise John F. Geisey and Dave Babcock envisioned when they launched the first venture location in Overland, Missouri, back in 1970. What started as a Midwestern experiment in discount retail quickly grew into a name known from St. Louis to Chicago. By the close of the 1980s, more than 70 locations dotted the region, offering customers everything from cookware to clothing, often at prices that drew long lines and loyal shoppers. Their slogan, "Save at Venture, Save with Style," appeared in flyers and echoed in television ads during local newscasts. Each store stood as a one-stop option for busy households seeking both value and variety. But by the early 90s, change arrived. Competitors moved in. Bigger stores, broader selections, deeper pockets. Venture split from May department stores in 1990, aiming to stand independently. The challenge proved too steep. In January of 1998, Venture filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy. Within half a year, the chain vanished. The building stood empty. Another thread in the American shopping story unraveled, quietly but completely. Caldor. Some retailers found their strength not in spectacle, but in sincerity, Caldor among them. Founded in 1951 by Carl and Dorothy Bennett, the store took shape in Port Chester, New York. The name itself, drawn from their initials, stood as a tribute to their shared ambition to make quality goods accessible without dressing them up or pricing them out of reach. Caldor shelves held appliances, electronics, furniture, jewelry, and sporting gear. All curated for working families who expected durability without the department store premium. Their slogan, "Where shopping is always a pleasure," wasn't only painted on windows, it echoed through every tidy aisle and fair-priced tag. As the company expanded through the Northeast, it earned a quiet reputation for reliability. By 1985, with over $1 billion in sales, Caldor had become a mainstay of suburban commerce. They opened stores in towns large and small, meeting everyday needs with unassuming grace. Yet the decade ahead brought stiffer headwinds. National chains scaled up, and the retail field shifted. Caldor, once steady, struggled to adapt. In 1999, the company entered liquidation. A familiar name faded from shopping centers, leaving behind shopping carts that no longer rolled and parking lots that once bustled every weekend. Circuit City. There was a season in American retail when Circuit City stood out like a beacon for those chasing the next piece of technology. Launched in 1949 by Samuel and Alan Wurtzel, it began as a modest operation, but by the 1980s, it had transformed into a national chain with bold red signage and stores big enough to rival supermarkets. Inside, shoppers navigated rows of television sets glowing behind glass, shelves stacked with stereo systems, camcorders, and early desktop computers. Knowledgeable staff were ready with answers, walking customers through the knobs, dials, and digital promises of each product. These weren't ordinary shopping trips. They were encounters with what was new and next. As years passed, the format grew familiar, and the brand cemented its place in neighborhoods all over the country. But winds of change swept through retail. Online giants moved faster, leaner. The 2008 recession didn't help. By January 2009, Circuit City filed for bankruptcy. With 567 stores and thousands of employees, the end came swiftly. Sales turned to clearance. Lights shut off, one location after another. And now, with storefronts long gone and aisles emptied out, what trace remains of a place that once helped introduce America to the future? 20 famous stores from the 1980s that no longer exist. Once in the heart of American towns, there were places that made our childhoods brighter and our weekends sweeter. Stores with jingles in the air and wonder on every shelf. But they're gone now. Ghosts of the 80s. Come along as we remember 20 beloved stores that time quietly swept away. Radio Shack. In the heart of small towns and city corners, there stood a storefront where curiosity bloomed beneath fluorescent lights. Radio Shack began in 1921, not with fanfare, but with two brothers in Boston who believed in coaxing wonder out of copper wire and solder. From that modest start, it grew into a national fixture, selling everything from transistor radios to home computers. By the late 1990s, its red and white sign had become a symbol of innovation, with 8,000 locations stretching from coast to coast. Tandy Corporation's 1962 acquisition steered it deeper into the age of electronics, where imagination met circuit boards. But time moved swiftly, and not always kindly. A shifting marketplace, leadership missteps, and fierce online competitors began to erode its foundation. In 2015, bankruptcy cast long shadows. Yet rather than fade entirely, it shifted course. Under new ownership, Radio Shack re-emerged in digital form, its name still flickering through online storefronts and scattered franchises. Though the aisles may be gone, the legacy hums on, through hobbyists wiring kits at kitchen tables, and the quiet persistence of a brand that once taught America how to tune in to possibility. Blockbuster Video. Friday evenings in the late 80s carried with them a kind of ritual. Cars pulling into strip malls, kids spilling out, and the familiar chime of the video store welcoming everyone inside. Blockbuster Video became the centerpiece of that weekly tradition. Born in 1985 under David Cook's vision, the first store opened in Dallas, Texas. Within 2 decades, Blockbuster had grown into a behemoth, planting its bold blue and yellow marquees in thousands of towns. By 2004, over 9,000 stores and more than 80,000 employees kept the reels turning. The aisles were lined with options, the shelves alphabetized like a library of cinematic dreams. Its rise coincided with the home entertainment boom, but every boom, history teaches us, carries the seeds of its decline. As Netflix introduced buy-mail rentals and on-demand streaming, the foundation began to shift. Management stumbled, innovation lagged. In 2010, the company filed for bankruptcy. By 2014, most storefronts had shuttered. Today, a single store in Bend, Oregon carries the name, more as a conversation piece than a business. Blockbuster's legacy wasn't built on film reels alone. It was built on Friday traditions, familiar carpeted aisles, and that walk toward the checkout counter with a movie in hand. Sharper image. In 1977, a different kind of store found its way into the American marketplace, not through bustling shopping centers, but through the pages of a catalog. Sharper image began with a single practical item: jogging watches. Yet the vision behind it reached far beyond the basics. Richard Thalheimer, its founder, saw the future coming and tried to put it on the shelf. Soon, those catalogs showcased gadgets that seemed borrowed from tomorrow: air purifiers, reclining massage chairs, and digital curiosities meant to intrigue as much as serve. The design was sleek, the promise bold. By the mid-1990s, the idea had grown into a chain of 187 stores in 38 states, each filled with gleaming devices that buzzed and blinked and promised a new way of living. Visitors came not always to buy, but to marvel. Yet innovation walks a fine line with risk. The Ionic Breeze Purifier, once a crown jewel, sparked controversy and lawsuits. Leadership changed, losses mounted, and by 2008, the company bowed out, delisted, and bankrupt. The showrooms emptied. But for a time, Sharper Image sold more than merchandise. It sold possibility, wrapped in brushed aluminum and lit by the glow of a touchscreen. Tower Records. In a time when music lived in grooves and crackles, Tower Records stood as a gateway to discovery. Russ Solomon's journey began behind the counter of his father's Sacramento drugstore, selling surplus jukebox records to passersby. That simple beginning grew into something far-reaching. By the 1970s, Tower had planted roots in San Francisco, converting an old grocery into a multi-floor destination for those chasing the latest LPs and obscure imports. The shelves stretched endlessly, each one a path to another artist, another rhythm. Word spread fast. By 1979, Tower's footprint expanded to Japan, followed by Canada, the United Kingdom, and parts of Asia, each store humming with anticipation and community. But the ground beneath the music industry shifted. Digital files replaced album covers, and listening habits grew more solitary. Tower tried to adjust, yet the tide proved stronger. By 2006, the doors had shut in the U.S., and the bins once full of vinyl and CDs sat empty. The company faded, but not completely. In 2020, its name returned, this time online, and whispered of a new chapter. Though the buildings are gone, the spirit of wandering through aisles in search of the next favorite song endures. Sam Goody. How did a single storefront on 9th Avenue come to shape how Americans brought music home? In the late 1940s, Sam Goody Gudowitz, a resourceful New Yorker, began selling records at a time when the long-play format was only beginning to catch on. He saw an opportunity not only in vinyl, but in mail-order pricing that brought LPs to college dorms and kitchen tables from coast to coast. By 1951, his business had grown into a chain, with stores that drew in customers searching for the latest hits and timeless classics. Over the next few decades, those locations expanded alongside the music industry itself, first vinyl, then cassettes, and eventually shelves brimming with compact discs. In 1986, licorice pizza stores were folded into the Sam Goody brand, further boosting its reach. At its height, over 800 Goody stores operated under the Musicland Group, generating billions in annual sales. But the rhythm of retail was changing. As digital downloads gained traction, foot traffic dwindled. By 2006, bankruptcy swept through the chain. The storefronts went dark. Yet, for a generation, buying music once meant a walk through Sam Goody's aisles, with discovery waiting on every shelf. Peaches records and tapes. Music once had weight and texture, pressed into vinyl, wrapped in sleeves, stacked high in crates. Peaches records and tapes embraced that era with open arms and open floor plans. Founded in 1975 by Tom Hyman on Hollywood Boulevard, the first Peaches store invited customers into something closer to a music warehouse than a retail outlet. Each location sprawled wide, filled with the crackle of old jazz, the pulse of rock, the wail of soul. It wasn't uncommon to see life-sized album covers mounted outside or handwritten autographs framed between speaker stacks. The stores numbered close to 50, spread through 22 cities, offering not only records, but a ritual, a place to wander, browse, and talk about what you found. But the marketplace changed course. As cassettes gave way to CDs and CDs to streaming, the business strained. In 1981, with nearly $20 million in debt, Peaches filed for bankruptcy. What had once been a thriving cathedral for music lovers went quiet. Yet for those who passed through its wide aisles and ran their fingers over glossy cover art, Peaches delivered more than product. It offered a gathering ground for anyone chasing the next great track. If this trip down memory lane brought a smile to your face, go ahead and give this video a like, and don't forget to subscribe for more journeys like this. Lionel Kitty City. Who could forget the excitement of turning a store aisle into an adventure trail? Lionel Kitty City brought that thrill to life, beginning in Philadelphia around 1957. Built on the idea of a toy supermarket, it drew families with wide aisles and rows of treasures, offering everything from puzzles to plastic dinosaurs. In the 1970s, the Lionel Corporation, famed for its electric trains, stepped in and grew the business under banners such as Lionel Playworld and Lionel Toy Warehouse. By its peak, over 150 stores had taken root in shopping plazas nationwide. From coast to coast, their striped logos and upside-down mascot welcomed children into a world built for them. Yet as the early 1980s unfolded, a harsh economic downturn forced hard decisions. Bankruptcy followed in 1982, and the company scaled back. But resilience marked their next chapter. By 1991, Lionel had bounced back to 100 stores, reclaiming its place among the top toy retailers in America. Then, almost without warning, it all unraveled. In June 1993, every remaining store prepared for closure. Shelves were emptied, signs taken down, and a beloved chapter in American retail ended. Those who recall the colorful shelves and Saturday trips know it was never merely about toys. It was about wonder and the joy of seeing the world through a child's eyes. Abraham and Straus. A name carried through the streets of Brooklyn for generations, Abraham and Straus began its journey in 1865 under the name Wexler and Abraham. The store grew in step with the borough, welcoming new ownership in the 1890s when the Straus family acquired interest and helped shape the direction of what became A&S. Inside, shoppers found more than merchandise. They encountered refinement, rows of linens, polished silverware, perfume counters, and attentive clerks created an experience many would come to treasure. By mid-century, it had become a fixture in New York's department store tradition, rivaling its neighbors not in scale, but in the familiarity it fostered. As years passed, expansion followed. New locations opened, each echoing the spirit of the Fulton Street flagship. Shoppers in Garden City and Paramus found the same sense of occasion, a stroll through fashion, fragrance, and holiday window displays. Yet, retail tides began to shift in the 1990s, and Federated Department Store's acquisition of Macy's altered the map. By April 30th, 1995, the A&S name faded from signage, replaced with a corporate standard. Though the escalators still carry shoppers upward, the rhythm has changed. The chandeliers remain, but the character, shaped by decades of commerce and conversation, is a story that belongs to yesterday's Brooklyn. Egghead software. In the era when floppy disks still spun and dial-up tones marked the digital frontier, Egghead Software opened its doors in 1984. A modest shop in Bellevue, Washington, launched by Victor D. Aladef, marked the beginning. Tech-savvy shoppers browsed narrow aisles, trading hard-earned dollars for shrink-wrapped boxes and a little hope. Each transaction came with promise: a faster spreadsheet, a new game, or a tool to teach yourself DOS commands. By the summer of 1987, Egghead had grown to 50 stores along the West Coast and entered the public market a year later. Challenges soon gathered. Inventory mishaps, legal battles, and wavering investor confidence chipped away at progress. Still, the company pressed forward, shifting its headquarters to Spokane and expanding into 30 states, employing more than 2,500 people. As technology sprinted ahead, Egghead tried to keep pace. In 1997, it sold off its corporate and educational divisions, signaling a pivot. By 1998, the company had shuttered most physical locations, betting everything on e-commerce. For a time, it rode high on the optimism of the dot-com boom. But that wave crested too soon. In 2001, bankruptcy brought the journey to a close. All that remained were empty shelves, echoing faintly with the hopeful hum of a dial-up modem and the dreams of a digital dawn. Babbage's. What became of that little store where early gamers first discovered digital adventure, not in sprawling worlds online, but in cardboard boxes on mall shelves? Babbage's arrived in 1987, modest in appearance, but rich in promise. James McCurry and Gary Kusin built it with a clear purpose: to sell software for home computers, but their idea coincided with a cultural shift already underway. In 1999, the name changed. GameStop stepped in, sleek and expansive, built on the groundwork that Babbage's had laid. Though the signage shifted, the thread remained. Through every release day line and every handheld device sold beneath fluorescent lighting, Babbage's legacy carried forward, in the quiet persistence of play and the joy of discovery handed over a counter. Toys R Us. Every child who pushed open those automatic glass doors walked into a world built for wonder. Charles Lazarus laid the foundation in 1948, starting with baby furniture during the rise of the post-war family. He watched carefully, saw what thrilled young faces, and in time, expanded his vision. By 1957, Toys R Us had taken on a name and a purpose that would reshape how generations shopped for joy. Its stores, sprawling and colorful, became landmarks of growing up. Aisles stretched wide, lined with shelves heavy with board games, action figures, bikes, and dolls. Children darted from display to display, while parents did their best to keep up. The brand grew into a global presence, steady and strong for decades. But then came changes that no toy could fix. Retail giants shifted online, investment firms tightened their grip, and debts grew heavy. Between 2017 and 2018, its walls came down, first in the United States, then the United Kingdom, then beyond. What had once drawn crowds with birthday lists and back-to-school gifts turned into empty square footage. Yet for many, the wonder of a Saturday spent among those shelves remains stitched into the story of childhood. A retail empire, now passed into history. Which of these stores brings back the clearest picture of your childhood? We'd love to hear your stories. KB Toys. Who could forget the sight of toy-stacked walls inside the shopping malls of yesteryear, where KB Toys stood waiting with all the promise of a Saturday afternoon. The company's story began in 1922, when the Kaufman brothers dealt in sweets rather than playthings. During the war years, a peculiar transaction, accepting a toy distributor's debt in product, set them on an entirely new course. By 1959, their first retail shop opened in Connecticut. From there, growth came quickly. By the early 1970s, they rebranded as KB Toy and Hobby, matching pace with America's growing love for suburban malls. They opened scores of locations throughout the Northeast and beyond. Walk into any one of them, and you'd find shelves packed with model kits, action figures, and games that chirped, flashed, or clattered with excitement. At their peak, 1,300 storefronts carried the name. But change crept in quietly. Online shopping took root, and the ritual of browsing in person began to wane. The Melville Corporation, KB's parent, could not withstand the shift. By 2009, the gates came down. And while the stores vanished, the era they belonged to left behind a trail of childhood joy and colorful aisles now spoken of in past tense. Woolworths. Certain stores didn't simply line city blocks, they anchored them. Woolworths stood with its bold signage and familiar facade, a presence as reliable as the passing streetcar or the daily paper. Frank Winfield Woolworth opened his first shop in 1879, betting on an idea that small coins could go further than people believed. What followed was a retail revolution. By the 1980s, Woolworths was woven into neighborhoods nationwide, offering rows of affordable goods, candies in glass jars, wool sweaters, kitchenwares, comic books. Its lunch counters drew workers, children, and travelers, serving more than meals. They served belonging. On any given weekday, stools filled with chatter, while the scent of grilled sandwiches drifted beyond the aisles. A pair of socks or a notebook might have been the reason to walk in, but comfort was the reason to stay. Yet retail moved with swift steps. New players entered, big box giants, sharper price points, glossier window displays. Malls drew younger shoppers, and suburban expansion left downtown stores behind. Woolworths adjusted, but each year brought stiffer competition and tighter margins. By the close of the 1980s, the store that once stood as a fixture of daily life started vanishing from city maps, leaving behind marble counters and wooden shelves, now dusted with silence. CompUSA. Buying a home computer once meant more than a trip to the electronics aisle at a big box chain. In 1984, in Addison, Texas, a company called Soft Warehouse opened its doors with a bold idea: give customers a place where everything, from floppy disks to repair service, could be found under one roof. 4 years later, that idea took on a new name: CompUSA. The first megastore arrived in Atlanta in 1988, and others followed in quick succession. Within a few short years, more than 200 stores carried the banner, each filled with motherboards, monitors, and staff who could explain the difference between RAM and ROM without missing a beat. The 1990s belonged to CompUSA. It became a launchpad for students, office workers, and hobbyists navigating a digital world still in its infancy. But the business shifted. Competition from sleeker retailers and price wars began to erode margins. By 2006, closures crept in. 2 years later, only 16 stores remained. Systemax acquired those locations, folding them into the Tiger Direct brand. CompUSA disappeared from malls and city maps, replaced by faster clicks and slimmer shelves. For many, those early visits offered more than a transaction. Hollywood Video. Which neighborhoods once came alive on a Friday evening because of a glowing red and white sign reading Hollywood Video? The company started in 1988 with a simple promise: to bring film into reach, one rental at a time. Within a few short years, its reach spread through places like California, Nevada, Washington, and Texas. These were spacious stores, often 7,500 square feet or more, with shelves stacked high with thousands of VHS tapes. Popular titles arrived in bulk, with over 100 copies waiting behind plastic covers. Inside, families shuffled along the aisles, debating comedies versus thrillers, while clerks called out names over intercoms and offered suggestions with the ease of true movie lovers. As DVDs arrived, the selection grew deeper, but the ritual remained the same. Grab a film, rewind it later. That rhythm began to unravel with streaming. The comfort of home and a broadband connection quietly took over. In 2010, Hollywood Video's parent company filed for Chapter 7 bankruptcy. Stores emptied out. Lights shut down. Plastic bins and faded posters were left behind. The storefronts vanished, but for many, the experience of scanning rows of titles under flickering lights remains unmatched by any algorithm. Are there any other beloved stores from the 80s we didn't mention here? Let us know in the comments. Borders Books. A walk into Borders Books once felt like stepping into a world bound not by walls, but by stories. That journey began in 1971 when Tom and Louis Borders opened their first store in Ann Arbor, Michigan. What started as a small venture on South State Street soon evolved into a cornerstone of American retail. Readers came not only for books, but for records, calendars, board games, and magazines. Throughout the 1980s and well into the 2000s, Borders expanded steadily. By 2010, it operated over 500 superstores nationwide, alongside 175 smaller outlets under the Walden Books name. The layout invited visitors to stay, and many did. Students, travelers, parents with children in tow. Each store carried its own rhythm, built around the turn of a page or the crackle of a new vinyl record. Yet as online sellers grew and digital convenience gained ground, Borders faltered. The company struggled to find its footing in the shifting terrain of modern retail. In 2011, bankruptcy was declared, and the process of liquidation began. Stores closed, workers departed, and another chapter in American retail drew to a close, taking with it the hum of discovery between rows of shelves. Walden Books. The story of Walden Books begins not with profit margins or bestseller lists, but with a small, enduring kindness in the heart of hardship. In 1933, during the throes of the Great Depression, Lawrence Holt and Melvin Kafka planted their vision in Bridgeport, Connecticut. Books, they believed, should not be a luxury, so they offered rental libraries, 3 cents a day for the company of Hemingway, Steinbeck, or a well-thumbed Western. This simple idea took root. By 1962, the first dedicated bookstore opened in Pittsburgh. The business grew steadily, expanding into shopping centers and department store corridors. Walden Books became familiar to mall-goers, its narrow aisles packed with paperback racks and the scent of ink on paper. Children waited by the comic book shelves while parents browsed bestsellers and cookbooks. Holiday shoppers filled baskets with calendars and card sets, their lists scrawled on scraps of paper. But retail winds began to shift. By the mid-1990s, Borders Group had acquired the chain. As online shopping gained speed, foot traffic dwindled, pages gave way to pixels, and by 2011, the final locations prepared to close. Yet, something of Walden Books, its purpose, its humanity, remains carried in those who once lingered by its shelves, finding stories to take home for a while. Retail is changing fast, faster than many expected. Which of these collapsing chains surprised you most? Let us know below. And if you found this eye-opening, give us a like, subscribe, and tap the bell so you won't miss what's next.